The truth is that owning real estate is expensive. But how expensive? It's all about the cost of gradual, ongoing deterioration that happens day after day after day. You can't stop it, so the associations that aren't keeping up with strong reserve funding find themselves with deterioration everywhere they look and not enough money to get things repaired or replaced. That's a horrible feeling to have. But I'll tell you right now, it's a very solvable problem. In this portion of our Recovering from Underfunded Reserves webinar, we introduce you to the concept of measuring both the ongoing cost of deterioration and how we measure the size of the problem at your association. And if we can measure it, we can fix it.
Well, thank you, Paige, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar today, and thank you for taking time out of your day to dive into learning. Well, I greatly appreciate that there's a number of board members here. Wow, what do we have? 60%, 66% board members, and so many of you are concerned about your underfunded reserve. So I appreciate that, and I welcome you. We're going to work on that problem today because we want to lead you to an improved future. And that starts with understanding what the problem is and how to get out of it. For today, we're going to walk through today's program with this agenda. First, all having a better understanding of, do we have a problem? So let's dive right into that. A few things I want to share and some basic principles, and one of them is that owning real estate is expensive. In the community association industry, we've heard so many times that owning a condominium can be a carefree way to live. And that may be true, but it is certainly not free. There are major common area components, projects that need to happen on a regular basis throughout the association, and that needs to be paid somehow. So owning real estate is expensive, and owning in a community association is no different. The second thing is that the board is responsible to sustain the association. They set the budget, the homeowners provide the cash. It's a symbiotic relationship where they work together. And I enjoy this cartoon here because it's two gentlemen speaking to each other, and they're saying this fiduciary thingy really complicates pillaging a corporation. And it's a joke at the situation. And it's just a reminder that board members are fiduciaries. They are responsible to look after the best interests of the corporation and its members. So we have to be very careful that you board members and the managers who support you are making wise, informed decisions. And the third is that Mother Nature and Father Time are very real and very powerful, and as of today, undefeated. Every day the sun comes up, there's weather events, and the properties that we live in and work in are wearing down. And we have to appreciate that they are the enemy. The enemy is not state law. The enemy is not the governing documents the enemy is not the board of directors. The enemy is Mother Nature and Father Time. We need to fight up against them, put up a good defense, or they're going to get the upper hand and turn our properties into, with enough years, dirt. So the question is, do we have a problem, and how big is it? And for everyone here listening to the program, joining us here, that's your question today. Do we have a problem? How big is it? What am I going to do about it? We start out with this idea. When I was thinking about the webinar today, I was thinking about how we are carried downstream into the future. We have this current that's drawing us forward. And so I started thinking about this idea of river rafting on a current. And we start out with no problem. And no problem is, it's a sunny day, we're on some inner tube type things, we're in the shallow water, and no problems. We are here just to have fun. We have no concerns. And so that's a starting point. Then we start to think, okay, well, how fast is the water flowing? And for your association, that means how fast is everything deteriorating? How fast do we need to move just to keep up? Because Mother Nature and Father Time are in control. They're driving us downstream. So what's that number at your association? And that is a very specific number. And we get to that by looking at your component list. We've done this in a prior webinar where we show the component list here, something similar to this. You see pool furniture, roofing, asphalt, repainting, hallways, things like that. And we take it one step further and we do a calculation on this. We put another column on the right and we call it the cost of deterioration. And it is literally the cost of the project divided by its useful life. You can see it very easily here in the second line item. $1,000 divided by 10 years is $1,000 per year. If you can do the math, it's $8,000 a year for the roof, $8,000 for the roof project divided by 20 years is $4,000 a year. For all your components, you add them up, and everything at the association here is deteriorating at $20,170 per year. If you are setting reserves aside at $20,170 per year, your deterioration rate, you're really not getting anywhere. All you're doing is keeping from falling farther behind. So if you're in a catch-up mode, you need to be setting reserves aside more than that. If you're in a surplus situation, like some associations are, it's okay to dial it back a little bit and slow down your reserve funding to get back to a good safe place, which is the 100% level. So that's your deterioration rate. That's how it's calculated. It's all based on your reserve components, and it should be custom to each and every association. Now that you know how fast basically the water is flowing, then you need to ask, what is our starting point? Are we starting at a good place? Or are we starting in trouble? You can see these people looks like they're either taking a break or starting their river rafting trip at a very peaceful place where it's nice and shallow. They're just smiling for the camera, no worries. But we know many associations are in a troubled position. So let's talk about that for a moment. We know that you can't get things done if you can't pay for it. If you have a leaky roof, if you have deteriorated asphalt, if you have spalling concrete on the outside of your building, if your ironwork is rusting, if your elevator is breaking down more often than you'd like it, you can't get things done and fixed and replaced if you can't pay for it. So money is critical. So that's what I'm going to address when we're talking about your starting point. And it's not just the cash. Here in the reserves world, we talk about your starting position in terms of percent funded. It's your comparison between the amount of deterioration at the association and the cash that you have. The cash is on the numerator and the deterioration is the denominator. It'd be nice if they're balanced and you're at 100% funded, but so often this is a situation that we see at associations where the deterioration gets the upper hand. There's more deterioration than there is cash. And that's why we have this curve in the chart. Now, this is a chart of special assessment risk on the vertical scale and percent funded on the horizontal scale. So on the left is low percent funded, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, and 20 to 30. You can see that there's a relatively high risk of special assessment, no surprise really, for associations that have, relatively speaking, very little cash compared to how much deterioration exists around the association. Then you get into the mid-range, 30 to 70%, where there's a fair amount of special assessment risk. We call them infrequent. Call them frequent here, infrequent in the fair range, and rare in the strong range for all the associations that are above 70% funded. So this tells you, are you in a heap of trouble now? And I want to specifically talk to the associations that are in the weak range, 0 to 30% funded. That's a high risk of special assessment. You need to be concerned about that. And for those of you the 45% of you who said you for sure are in an underfunded situation, most likely you're in this range. I don't know if you know it or you just feel it, but we'll call you the underfunded one. And you may ask, okay, 45% of us in this webinar today, but is that representative across the country? Well, fortunately, we have the statistics on that. And this is the population of associations in each risk range across the country. And you can see that about 34% of associations are in the poor range or weak range, where they have a high risk of special assessment. These are the ones making all the news. So it's not like everyone is there. And then the fair range is in the middle. And actually, that's the largest population of associations in the middle, where they have infrequent special assessments here and there. Maybe a big unsettling event, maybe a surprise. They don't have a lot of margin. They have special assessments periodically. And then there's 26% of associations are in the strong range, where they just don't even think about special assessments because they have the cash set aside. They've been responsible over the years. Now, that's the national profile. And some of you are thinking, well, that's not my reality. And if that's what you're saying, maybe that's because you're in Florida. Florida is one of the 2 states in the country that give homeowners the opportunity for a line item veto for reserve funding. Now, about 2 years ago, that was partially taken away. And so in the last couple of years, more Florida associations are responsible to address their reserve needs. But still, there's so many community associations in Florida that have gotten themselves behind. 49% of associations in Florida are in the weak range. And that's why, if you were going to ask what state in the union would we have a Champlain Towers South tragedy, I would guess Florida. And then you add, not only is it the association with a very disproportionate amount of poorly funded associations, it's also a state with warm temperatures, moist ocean air, things like that. Now, the other state is Ohio. It doesn't have quite as many associations, and so it doesn't make the news as much. But this may be your reality if you live in Florida or Ohio. So at this point, we know how fast the river is flowing, that dollars per year of deterioration. We know where to find it. It's in your reserve study. It's a calculation. It's a number. And now you know that your reserve funding needs to be in that kind of range. And you also know how well equipped we are or aren't. Where are we starting? Where's our starting point? And that's what we measure with percent funded.
At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you want to join us in this mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below on what you'd like to see us address in a future video. Let's plan for your best future.